The Center for Policy Research and Evaluation at the NYU Metro Center presents a parent-led conversation series focused on family engagement. Today, I am joined by parent leaders across the nation to discuss the importance of early intervention education and its impact on students and families. Thank you to Leslie Junkin and Elizabeth Maxwell for joining in to share your insights and experiences. I want to open this conversation by asking, why is early intervention education so important?
I guess I'll start. It's important because it's a foundation for children developmentally delayed or have a medical condition for them to be able to meet the regular milestones that children meet.
So making sure that there's a space for children to receive the services and supports that they need to just be able to perform and function at a level that all students are performing and functioning at.
Yes, and also it also brings support to the family so that parents who sometimes think that they did something wrong or why aren't things working? Like I didn't go through this before, or, maybe this is their first child and, not knowing what to expect. But there's somebody to help educate them as well as working with the child. So it's a twofold program.
I think sometimes, especially younger parents, other say childcare providers, physicians may see some things that are concerning, but if it's a first time parent or a parent who doesn't have a lot of experience, say you don't have a large family, so you haven't been around children a lot, I think that educational piece of early intervention is really crucial because they learn how to identify what's not typical childhood behavior and what is, but also where to reach out for the right supports. And then I think if early intervention works well, the parents are able to connect with other families to create a larger support network for them as well in finding those parents who have commonalities with other children with developmental delays or disabilities.
Thank you both, because I think you are highlighting both sides of it, right? So it's not just making sure that the student has what they need, but also making sure that parents are informed, that their feelings are validated, that they are acknowledging that maybe my child isn't where I want them to be, but I feel like I'm doing everything right. Am I missing something, right? That validation that parents sometimes need to know that it's okay to ask for resources and supports for their children if they feel like they need them.
Yes, I think so.
So I want to follow
Well,
that.
and I'll just
Go ahead.
no, I was just to say, just as a parent, I know when my daughter was young, it was for me, it was like, well, she's not that much further behind than the other kids in the friends that we had who had children in a similar age group. And becoming involved in receiving the early intervention services kind of helped me connect with learning how to go through those emotions and knowing that it was okay if she wasn't exactly where she needed to be. I think that's a really important part. If early intervention is done well, I think it also incorporates that piece with helping families adjust to what normal may look like inside their home.
I would agree with Leslie on that because, like I know my child who wasn't verbally communicating in the time frame that she should have been able to have, some kind of intelligible language, you know, to be able to have the reassurance from professionals, whether it's a speech language pathologist or somebody who, said, well, I wasn't receiving services from the actual program. I was going and getting services while I waited. Um, that, things aren't going to work the way you want them to until all the puzzle pieces are starting to interlock, which means like if you do not have all of the supports in place that are needed for the therapy to work, the advancement isn't going to occur. So no matter how fast or how much you want it, it's not on your pace and you do have to wait sometimes and you have to accept that. And that's really hard. Well, everybody's like, this is what's going on for me. And you're like, oh,
Yes, I think that that's so important. And I want to follow up that remark that you both just made by asking, um, where do families start when they feel they need to get additional services from their for their children? So where does early intervention begin? Who does it begin with? And just overall, how do families get started in the process?
I think I think a lot of states Each state does it differently because there are different agencies that run the early intervention programs in different states. With our early intervention in Mississippi, the parents are connected mainly. The connections are made mainly via who the providers are. Like the therapists come in and they'll have resources for you to say, here's a parent support group I may know of. That's another component of that service coordination, is connecting them with resources. But just for families who in general were looking, I would say to any family in any state, look for your state's parent training center, because they're going to have staff there who have children with disabilities, but also know where to find those resources to get them that information. Because some parents aren't ready for a lot of information in the beginning. Their child may be even 2 years into the program before they've kind of gone through some of that emotional processing and say, okay, I'm ready to learn things now. Because it's, especially if it's a lifelong disability, there's so much to learn. It's quite overwhelming for many families. But I would say a good place to start for families just in general would be with their state's parent training center, because they're going to have access to that information from birth through 26 years of age.
I would agree with what Leslie said. Every state does it differently. So, in the state of New York, if a parent feels that their child isn't meeting milestones when they should, or they just feel something is off and like their doctor isn't willing to come to the table, because sometimes that happens with primary care physicians and pediatricians, um, they can call their county's program. There's a county program similar to like what Leslie was saying for a parent center, except for in New York, it's done by county. Every county delivers it differently. And then there's also different outreach services based on location. Like the county I live in, they have a service that's provided to our urban center that does screenings as well, for children, for anybody who goes and participates with that. So there's also extra resources out there beyond the normal ones that exist.
Thank you both. I think that that's so important for families to know. And so I want to close out this conversation by asking, what recommendations do you have for families who are wanting to start this process, or for educators who are looking to support families through this process?
I think for families that are starting out in this process, and I'm sure Leslie can touch on the same similar situation because it's all across the nation. It's not just a my state problem. Be prepared to know that just because you qualify today doesn't mean that people are going to be here to help you tomorrow or in a week or in 2 weeks. Sometimes you have to wait, and sometimes you have to seek out other services that are available, or you also have to communicate with your service coordinator to see, hey, is there a group that maybe we could utilize while we wait? Is there another service that's a support mechanism that could help, because like it's just not working and I need external supports. Those are things that are there. And I think it's also incumbent on, when we start to get the providers in the house, as they're building a relationship with the child and building a relationship with the family, that if they notice something and that they know that there's another community support that might help that family, to offer that support to them, whether the family takes it or not. Just knowing that there's resources available sometimes is a reassurance.
Yes, I agree. And I think one of the things for families in the beginning, I found that locating other families in my community got me connected with other service providers and other service or therapy opportunities. I called a couple of churches, I called some daycares in town. I even reached out to our Head Start program asking, do you know of any support groups for families? And thinking about disability specific organizations, like my daughter has Down syndrome. So you just Google Down syndrome support groups in the state that you live in. Those groups will be able to connect you quickly, because they make it their mission to find those local things that they can connect families to. And I think for even for parents and professionals, parents don't know how to communicate what they don't know to the professionals that are working with them. And those professionals don't typically receive a tremendous amount of training in how to pull that information from families, how to start those conversations. I think for any professional going into a field serving families of children with any type of developmental delays or disabilities, learn how to communicate with those families from their perspective and not necessarily from that technical perspective. That makes a big difference to the parents, and be able as a professional to say, I don't know. Let me ask a couple of the other families I might be working with, and they may have some resources to share with you. I think that for me is always interesting to watch when a professional would say, I don't know, rather than saying, let me do a little homework and see if I can find you something. So I think we can all kind of full circle work together, but it's teaching the parents how to communicate it, but also teaching the professionals what to listen for.
Thank you both. I think these are really amazing insights to anyone who is thinking about supporting families through the early intervention process, or families themselves thinking that these are services that they may want to seek out. Overall, what I'm hearing throughout this conversation is that it's okay for families to ask questions. It's okay to seek out resources within their community, and to ask the individuals who are working with their children every day what ways that they could recommend services and supports to continue to support their children and the things that they need. I want to thank you both for sharing your time with me here today and for sharing your insights. Before we close out, is there any final thoughts that you would like to share?
For me, it would be to families, don't think you have to know everything in the beginning, because it's a long-term process. You will learn you'll learn things every day, but a lot of parents think, well, I should have known this, or had I known where to look, we might not have had this problem. No one knows where to start if they've never been there before. So that's really important to make sure that families are aware you didn't miss this. You'd never known what you didn't know what you were missing, or you didn't know what to look for. And that burden of not knowing is a really hard burden for a parent to carry who's already struggling with a situation that's very new and unfamiliar and very frightening for most people.
I think to your point, Leslie, when you made the statement about finding other parents who are in a similar situation or have been, I think for the parent who's coming into this, finding that network of people who have already been through, know the process, and know, like, they know what it's like to drown because they've
Yeah,
already been there,
yeah.
is so super important to lean in on them, because even if you're feeling unsure, trust me, these people are not going to find a way to harm you. They're there to support you. They are one of the strongest communities in existence.
Mm, totally agree.
Well, with that, I want to thank you both for joining me today. I think that we learned a lot from what you had to share.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To find more resources on family engagement and parent leadership, please be sure to check out the Center for Policy Research and Evaluation's website, including our research brief series on engaging student and family voice.